Okay, so in line with all the stops being removed from whatever thing with various three-letter federal agencies, the FCC has decided that they will be partaking in as well. So basically, there was a vote to restore net neutrality. So if we click on this thing here, it brings up the PDF. So I don't, yeah. Um. So today, Commissioner Anna M. Gomez voted to restore net neutrality at the FCC April opening meeting. Restoring net neutrality would bring back a national standard for broadband reliability, security, and consumer protection. I think in general, depending on your ISP, they're already doing this or not throttling you. It's just based on this web services that you visit. But I think those companies are far and few between in general. Since 2017, there's been no federal oversight over this vital service. Restoring FCC oversight of broadband internet access under Title II ensures that this essential resource is open, safe, and secure for all. So basically, since the start of Donald Trump's presidency, they haven't had this in net neutrality enacted. And so now they're bringing it back on an election year. Okay. Commissioner delivered remarks about her vote in English and Spanish. Broadband access to the internet is a critical conduit that is essential for modern life, said Commissioner Gomez. Protecting this critical infrastructure that is essential to the safety, economy, health, education, and well-being of this country is good public policy. The value is so great that we cannot wait for the flood to arrive before we start to build the levee. Her full statement in support of restoring net neutrality is available below and will also be published in the FCC's website. Yeah, so they don't have. Okay. Actually, this is so they have another page with it, and if we go to the Gomez statement, we can see that it's not in Spanish. Let's see. Commission of Federal FCC, of course. In the month of April, the commissioner voted to restore net neutrality. This action reestablishes an important mark in. Oh wait, no. Yeah, basically federal point in regulation to guarantee that the internet continues being accessible and secure. No supervision over service establishment, supervision of the FCC over the access of the internet and the this. So there's nothing different so far. Access to the internet is a way of communication, an important way of but fundamentally important way of communication. It is essential for modern life. Protecting this infrastructure is essential for security, the economy's health, education, and well-being of our country, and is a good political move. Its value, we should protect it before it is too late. So the value is so great that we cannot wait for the flood to arrive before we start to build the levee. So it basically expresses the same sentiment here. It's just plainer language. Its value is so relevant that we can't. We should protect it before it's too late. So yeah. Yeah, so nothing's really different in Spanish on this statement. So yeah, let's see. So as of today, I've been an FCC commissioner for 7 months. In the past 7 months, I've had the privilege of meeting with stakeholders, industry, civil rights, and public interest groups and members of the public. I've met with advocates who support today's item and advocates who don't. I've met with people across the country who emphasize just how necessary their broadband internet connection is to their everyday lives. Heard from veterans and care providers that 80% of medical treatment for recovery requires a broadband connection, This is very true. Being as the VA largely does a lot of things online now, in order to even get a minute amount of things done, like submitting travel and things, travel reimbursements and things like that, you need an internet connection. And not having a good connection or speed can hamper that, especially if an ISP is limiting it. But I don't see how specifically VA medical services would be limited by an ISP that way. But anyway, I've heard from parents, students, and teachers broadband connection is necessary to complete much of the homework assigned to students. This is also true. Depending on the websites that the students may use for sources, it can be difficult to get a good connection depending on your ISP, but it may not necessarily be the ISP as well. It could be the server end that is limiting that speed. So it comes down to two ends, whether the servers can pay for the broadband, the bandwidth, or whether it's the ISP limiting that bandwidth. Heard from consumers about the importance of broadband connection for keeping in touch with friends and family, particularly those who live abroad. So this becomes interesting because of rural environments. For a long time, HughesNet was kind of the de facto for overseas connection or rural connection because of their satellite system. But now since Starlink has stepped in and actually provided a much more reliable and faster connection than HughesNet, it kind of in some senses makes it a non-point. But yeah, it depends on how much you can pay for it. But you do own the equipment at the same time. You're not renting the equipment from some company. There is a difference with that as well. I've received messages from parents who are concerned about losing their broadband connection and what will do to the economic opportunity of their family and kids. This is probably, in many cases, pertinent for rural areas because in a lot of places, connection isn't always that reliable. But this can also prove a problem that is outside of any FCC guidance line, any possible FCC jurisdiction because of power concerns. So you can lose connectivity because your power's out, which is something else altogether. Heard from first responders that having a reliable broadband connection, especially in times of emergency, can save lives and speed up recovery efforts. So again, with this one, I don't see why ISPs are limiting broadband connection for first responders, being as generally they have their own dedicated network for a lot of things. But yeah, they can use their phones for certain things too. There are certain phones designed for first responders in mind for that rough and tumble thing going on. I will start with the thing on which we all agree. Broadband access to the internet is a critical conduit that is essential for modern life. We all agree. And as a nation, we recognize the importance of connectivity and have made a historic multi-billion-dollar investment in broadband for all. So they've had programs for rural broadband coverage for ages, and it still hasn't improved very much. In the past with wireless internet service providers, I've had issues it would take 3 hours to upload a video that was only like 10-15 minutes long. And so that's why I generally cut down time like that, is because it took so long to upload. Whereas now with Starlink, it doesn't even take near that long. But this is more of an issue of the service providers that are out there that may be getting the government money from it aren't providing the best of service, it seems. And there are still many people that are lost with a slower connection because of the quality of service that these wireless internet service providers don't give, or because of like turf wars that different companies have agreements that each different companies have between each other, that I won't cut into this turf if you won't cut into this turf. And so you have an exclusivity area where it's only like one or two companies that are there. But again, Starlink has changed that game with the fact that they are not beholden to certain cell towers or things like that to keep things up. Despite this unanimous agreement of the importance and value of this critical infrastructure plays in our modern society since 2017, there's not been a federal framework in place to protect and secure the integrity of our networks. And I think Starlink has rolled out well within that time frame to allow for better connectivity. So whatever the government did has been pretty useless. We've had a patchwork of state net neutrality rules that have upheld the foundation. Yet there's no expert agency ensuring at a national level that the internet is open and fair. Okay, why an expert agency? So we've already got the framework at the state level, but you're expecting a federal agency to be an expert on like upholding these rules across the nation. In a lot of ways, having that central office can be a resource for information for those states to manage things. But as a ruling body, it seems that like a lot of federal things just don't do very much, or they become very counterproductive. Protecting this critical infrastructure that is essential to the safety, economy, health, education, and well-being of this country is good public policy. Value is so great that we cannot wait for the flood to arrive before we start to build a levee. That would leave us woefully behind in an increasingly digital world where this critical resource is constantly at play. So most other companies or countries don't have net neutrality. We are actually jumping ahead of most countries in essence by instating net neutrality, then by being brought back by it. So it's this thing of most other countries are actually limiting a lot of this, whereas now net neutrality in essence leaves it so that, oh yeah, this can be done. You've got, I think in some cases where ISPs in other countries are required to limit what their customers can see because of the laws of the land. But so that is not net neutrality. So being woefully behind in an increasingly digital world, we've been somewhat ahead depending on the country that you look at, which is a large number of them, I think. That is why what we are doing here today is important. Today, we reinstate appropriate guardrails to ensure that this critical conduit remains accessible and secure for all. We restore FCC oversight of broadband internet access, the essential telecom service of this century, with bedrock authority in Title II of the Communications Act. So, I'll get into that debate in a few more paragraphs. I want to be very clear about what we are doing today. We reinstate guardrails to safeguard and secure broadband infrastructure to protect consumers and ensure that the internet remains open and available to all content providers and consumers. So again, this becomes an ISP won't limit your bandwidth based on your content or the servers you're accessing, or they won't limit you based on the consumer that you are of said content. Although there may be some restrictions based on DMCA claims made that way that will limit what you can do. So if you're using the BitTorrent protocol and you're downloading something completely legally, then they shouldn't be limiting your bandwidth. They should only but you will still get a DMCA notice or takedown notice based on the kind of depending on the content that you are distributing via that protocol. We return to legally sustainable rules that track those that have been upheld in court and affirm the principles that have governed the growth of the internet since 1998. This is not about controlling internet content. It is not about stifling investment, regulating rates, or reducing competition. It is not about controlling the internet. Instead, the rules we adopt today ensure that access to the internet remains open, safe, and secure. These rules ensure that all viewpoints, including ones with which I disagree, are heard without discrimination. More so, these rules protect consumers while also maintaining a healthy, competitive broadband internet ecosystem. So, does this mean that any federal agencies that happen to tell certain companies to remove content are included in this, or is this based on connectivity speeds? Because we know that competition is required for access to a healthy, open internet that is accessible to all, they ensure that the next generation of innovators and startups have the same opportunities that the large tech companies of today had when they were starting out in garages and dorm rooms. Our goal is to implement this framework that continues to encourage innovation and the investment we've seen while net neutrality policies were in place prior to 2017, and the continued massive investment after 2017 when states stepped in and implemented a patchwork of rules in response to the elimination of federal protections. So this is kind of a very appropriate response. At the state level, they were adding protections for net neutrality. And I would have to double check where, but they may have enshrined them in law via proper legislative processes. The framework we adopt today is balanced and reflects the feedback that the Commission has received from stakeholders and consumers. What about representatives in the government? It adopts a framework that is tried and true and reinstates similar rules to those that were in effect for providers between 2015 and 2017. We understand smaller providers are the backbone of the internet access in many rural and underserved areas, and our approach is crafted with their vital role in mind. We've taken special consideration of smaller providers by exempting these providers of certain transparency requirements and temporarily forbearing from certain foreign ownership requirements. So bigger companies are required to be very, very transparent, while smaller ones. So in a sense, it can be very paperwork intensive to be that transparent. But if you're keeping proper digital records, then that transparency should be as easy as sending the records that you have and having the right automated record keeping in place. But anyway, most importantly, I support today's item because it prioritizes customers and gives the Commission more tools to close the digital divide and ensures that consumers are in charge of what they do online and that they can be confident that when they send information over their broadband connection, it will not be blocked or altered by their provider. These protections are essential for all consumers, but especially for those communities who have been historically left on the wrong side of the digital divide. Rural communities. But thank you to the many advocates, stakeholders, and members of the public who provided feedback and participated in this proceeding. My staff and I met with over 45 parties. Appreciate hearing all of your feedback. Item that we adopt today is stronger because of these meetings. So basically, it's reinstating something that was there before. But again, if you really want this to become something that is permanent or more permanent, then it should be done through the legislative process rather than through an arbitrary commission of people that are unelected and do not represent the people necessarily. It would be better if this is something that people really want, then this should be something brought to the Congress people that represent them so that they can vote on it and make it an actual law rather than an FCC ruling or an arbitrary, some arbitrary ruling made by a federal agency under the, executive powers in essence. So the FCC would stand to only enforce those rules rather than making legislation as well, because that's outside of their role. But let's see. We can look at the other statements if we want to that are quite a bit longer. I think that one is a big one, but it's also shorter. Everyone else is a bit wordier. So another issue I had with this is, so like you had Ars Technica and a number of other journalistic outlets that basically ended up talking about this, but they didn't link to these statements or anything on the FCC website. And that's kind of like my big issue is I literally had to go and find, okay, these journalists are incapable of linking to the FCC site for some reason. You can link to US Telecom and go to there, but that only has this here. You can link to, let's see, your own other articles. Let's see, NCTA, another newsroom that doesn't matter. Let's see, another Ars Technica, another Ars Technica, another Ars Technica, and a freepress.net. Where's the FCC article? You can link to it. My goodness. It's right there. It's not hard. Link to the PDF, link to the docx, even link to the .txt. Is it really that hard? Honestly, you lazy journos. Anyway, you can read the actual statements on the FCC website. It's like this one right here. You go fcc.gov/document/FCC restores net neutrality. That's it. Easy. Link to it, you dumb journos. If you enjoyed the video, then like, comment, subscribe, feed the algorithm, boost the video up, share this video with your friends. If you found it informative or you just want to chat, I've got plenty of places in the description, Discord, Guilded, and what have you. Check those out, and I will see you guys in the next one.